Have you ever heard the dead speak? First, you don't know what's happening to you. Then you get startled. But does it make you happy? No. It is terrifying. The voice that once was so familiar now unsettles. The soothing tone of the words now are sharp as knives. Well, not really, but how else could you describe it? Distorted? Unwanted? Whatever you call it, it is unpleasing. Not because you dislike the person, but because you shouldn't be able to hear them. My buddy and I wanted to investigate some strange sightings that hikers had made in the recent weeks in the Salmon Chalice National Forest up here in Idaho. Descriptions went from large electricity pole to tree with arms all the way to skinny hairless Bigfoot. But I knew better. It must have been this Sirenhead thing people have been talking about lately. I loved horror stories since I had been a kid. They didn't scare me, they rather intrigued me. Intrigued for the truths that might be hidden within them. Some years ago, when the world was talking about Palehead, I believed it to be at least partially true. Sure, a monster from a different dimension, here to consume our life essence, sounded pretty dumb. But someone using a mask that makes them horrifically pale, going around murdering people and then shaving their heads, I could believe that. So what if Sirenhead had a simple explanation to it? The day my friend and I had picked to visit Salmon Chalice turned out to be quite a rainy one. Screw it, Thomas had said, and I agreed. It would definitely give us the perfect ambience for our endeavor. We grabbed his uncle's old video camera, some provisions, and headed out after a big lunch. It took us about 2 hours in Mom's camper until we arrived. It just stood around in her garage, so she agreed when I asked if I could take it for a camping trip. The fog breezed over the treetops like a river streaming down a mountain. It was cold, but we just put on our jackets and made our way into the forest. After following the trail for about 20 minutes, we deviated and went straight into the thicket. It brought me back to my childhood days, when Dad was still around. Hearing him calling my name when I was hiding in the grove near our house, just to scare him after he walked past. Memories I now hope to forget. We have been wandering around for almost 3 hours when we heard it. At first, all I was able to hear was the rain hitting the leaves above and around me. It was a calming sound, something I had always loved. But that was interrupted by a noise in the distance. It sounded like a foghorn. It was followed by a weather forecast for the next couple of days. There's no way. Could that be Sirenhead? I said to Thomas, who just looked at me with excitement. We saw a knoll a little bit to our left, so we walked that way and ended up finding a plateau. From there, we looked around. First with the naked eye, then with our video camera. We saw a flock of birds suddenly being scared off and fly in our direction, but nothing else. So we decided to walk back and call it a day. We had been walking for probably an hour when Thomas fell. He slipped off the rock we were walking over and landed right in a bush. We laughed and I helped him out, but when I looked back to where he had just laid a second ago, I didn't trust my eyes. It was a part of a siren that was laying there. Thomas was as surprised as I was. We looked at each other, well knowing what the other one was thinking. I grabbed it and put it into my backpack. We didn't say a word that evening. When we woke up the next morning, Thomas expressed pain in his ankle. He wanted to rest that day to speed up the healing process, just in case, he said. So I went out alone, armed with a flashlight, the camera, and some sandwiches. The rain had stopped during the night, but The further I got, the more it started to rain again. Fortunately, I was wearing my raincoat. I made it all the way to the small plateau we had found, but this time I continued where we had stopped the day before. It was pouring, and I slid down the muddy hill. Glad I live alone, I thought. I wouldn't have Mom yelling at me for my dirty clothes once I got home. I took a look at my watch. It was already 5 p.m. I had been out for hours, but I hadn't found anything yet. So I continued and hoped for the best. Another half hour went by. Then I froze. I stood on a small hill. Down there, maybe a mile away, I saw the electric tree pole. It was taller than I expected and creepier than I imagined. The head was just 2 sirens. It was skinnier than Logan, and that was difficult to pull off. The view of it wasn't too bad. But then, I heard a familiar voice. "What's the matter, Liam?" I hadn't heard my dad's voice in a long time. The last time I had watched a video of him was probably 5 months ago. But I shouldn't have heard his voice then and there. He had been dead for more than a decade. "What's wrong, Liam?" There, again, his voice. It sounded like it was transmitted through some old speakers. I started to record as the thing turned ever so slightly its sirens. "Liam, it's all good. Don't panic." Don't panic. I was calm, just creeped out to the max. How did this Sirenhead thing know my name anyway? And Dad. Why was I hearing this voice? I slowly backed up, making sure to have it all on camera. Then the creature started walking. It was walking towards me. I ran as if my life depended on it, and it might have. I don't know. As soon as I had entered the more dense forest, my ears felt like they would burst. I fell to the ground, pressing my hands against my ears. I had heard a tornado siren before, but this was on a whole different level. I felt the ground shake. Slowly, I got up. The sound had stopped, but was still ringing in my ears. Instead, I now heard branches crack and birds chirping in protest. I looked over my shoulder. That thing was still pursuing me. It wasn't very fast, but its steps for sure were bigger than mine. I ran, and I ran. Not looking back, just trying to get away from this nightmare. After something that felt like an eternity, I reached the campgrounds. Thomas had been examining the broken siren we had found one day earlier. Without any explanation, I told him to strap in and we drove off. I told him everything and showed him the short clip I was able to record. Hearing my dad's voice again, as Thomas played the recording, sent shivers down my spine. I would never be able to hear his voice again without having Sirenhead on my mind. Back in Moore, I went to the local bar. When my dad passed away, I saw my mom bring home bottles of stuff she didn't allow me to drink. Now, I would be buying those same kind of bottles to try to forget what I had heard and seen. Some nights, I would wake up in the middle of the night just to hear a siren in the distance, not knowing if it was an emergency or the sound of another innocent soul getting tormented to never be the same again.